But I want you today to kind of take us back. I think it was 1980,
1989,
89,
January.
and kind of give folks a little bit of history. Tell them what was happening back in 1989.
I was on my way to church. I left the pastor's conference and I was going home. It was Wednesday. I was on my way to church to do a Wednesday night Bible study, and I didn't make it. Left the conference that morning, raining, cold day. I'm on my way to church. I'm driving across a rural highway, only just 2 or 3 miles from the entrance of the conference center. I had about 130 miles to go to get home. On a bridge, narrow old bridge, an 18-wheeler coming downhill from the opposite direction. Said he was trying to miss a car that pulled out in front of him, and when he did, he went around that car and hit me head on. The truck really ran over my car. Didn't just hit it, it ran over it. And big truck, small car. And I was killed instantly. And
Okay, wait, before we go, for those of you watching the show, did you hear that? You were killed instantly.
Yeah, 4 paramedics were eventually dispatched to the scene because there were 4 vehicles, the truck driver and 2 more cars beside mine. So they were there to obviously treat those people, and really it was a good start because the driver of the truck and the other 2 people were not hurt.
Okay.
So, but that did mean that 4 paramedics ended up working on the same patient. That was me. Mm-hmm. And these were seasoned veterans. They had tried everything at one time or another to try to revive somebody, and they tried everything they knew that day. They were unsuccessful.
Now, did they take you out of the car? I mean, or
no,
what's going on here at this time?
Actually, I really couldn't be removed from the car.
Because I mean, literally, this truck semi just
ran over me. I put my hand up, apparently, when the truck was coming for me. When I did that, it took my hand with it into the back seat of the car, and from here forward was lying on the back seat of the car.
Wow.
The dashboard collapsed on both my legs, so my right leg was broken right at the knee, so it went the other direction instead of this direction. And then it severed my left leg. It hit right about 1 inch above that knee. And what it did, it just sat down on my leg, and 4 inches of femur, largest bone in the human body, was ejected out of the car and never found. So I had brain damage. I was impaled on the steering wheel. They couldn't get me out to treat me. They were trying to revive me in the car.
Okay, so you're dead.
Right.
You're dead. We're going to talk more, obviously, in the next show about what happened there, but I assume you've got some great prosthetics. I mean, I lost my leg at the age of 6.
Right.
I walk around pretty good. I noticed, you said you had your leg severed, your arm severed. That is an amazing prosthetic arm.
It is. No, it's a real arm. It's a real arm. They put it back on. But they could put probably 1 human together after our spare part.
That's right.
Both of us together could make somebody. No, they tried a new technique on me that had never been done before. It was invented by a Russian doctor in Siberia, and so because I had pneumonia, double pneumonia, in the ICU just a few days later, that's deadly. Very few people recover from double pneumonia. So they had to either amputate what was left of my limbs so I could because I was in traction on all of them, to set me up so I could get breathing treatments, or my wife decided to try a new technique that had never been done before, and that was the Ilizarov technique that involves the stainless steel halos. You know about these. Oh, yeah. And they go around you, and then wires and rods go through you and out the other side, and they hold your bones in place from the outside as if they were still connected on the inside.
Okay, that's an amazing thing to even try to wrap your mind around. Now, let's go back, because we're kind of jumping ahead here a little bit. First off, you've got 4 people saying you're dead.
Yes.
And so I've read your book, because you've got an amazing book, 90 Minutes in Heaven, which everybody needs to pick up. Traffic got backed up.
It did, in both directions. But behind me were a lot of pastors who left the same conference I was at.
Okay.
And one of them was a person I heard speak, but I didn't meet him. He and his wife walked up to the bridge. Obviously, it's blocked. They're not going anywhere.
Right.
So he walked up probably to find out what was going on, and then saw all the carnage and said to the policeman, "I'm a pastor. Can I pray for any of the victims?" And the policeman said, "There's no one to pray for. Everyone is okay except the man on the red card. He's dead. He didn't make it." And when he said that, the policeman, God spoke to the preacher, which is a good thing.
Yeah, it is.
And he said, in so many words, "Pray for the man on the red car." Well, that made no sense to him. He never thought about praying for a dead man. It wasn't part of his theology.
Right.
But he was obedient, which is, of course, what God is really looking for, not understanding, obedience. And so Dick Onrecker said to the policeman, I need to pray for the man in the red car. And he said, he's dead.
Yeah, the policeman knows knows
Yeah,
you're
why
dead.
would you want to do that?
Right.
He said, well, because God told me to. So he has to really kind of persuade them to even let him get near the car because it's dangerous, wreckage.
Right.
And so he finally got permission to do that. I was covered up with a tarp so nobody would have to look at me. He got under the tarp, he's examining me, and discovers the only thing that didn't break was my right arm. And it is. So he reached between the two front seats where the body was slumping, and he put his hand on my right shoulder. He began to pray for me because God told him to.
Right.
So that was just the start of prayer. You know, my church was notified that I'd been in a wreck, but not that I was dead, because I had to tell my family first. They were not available. Eva was teaching school and in a classroom, and the kids were in school too. So eventually everyone finds out that I've been in a wreck, but not dead, and they all start praying because they don't have anything else to do until they get more information. This spreads all over the country. It spreads all over the world in a very short period of time. While the body is lying under that tarp on the bridge, people are praying all over the world, lifting up petitions to the throne of God. I don't know they're praying because I'm at the throne of God, having the best time. If I'd have known they were praying down here, I would have told them to stop. And because if you've been there, you don't want to be here. Even the Brian Arnold show.
That's right, brother. Amen.
So they're all praying and God's listening because he always is. And the body's under the tarp. The earth suit that I wear, like the one we wear here, the one that's pretty fragile, as we both know. Dick Onrecker's under the tarp praying, and he's been praying for an hour and a half now. The accident happened at 11:45, 1:15, he's praying. He's got his hand on my shoulder, and he's singing a song. He was one of those preachers who could sing and preach. Mm-hmm. I'm not. And he's holding on to my right shoulder, and he's singing the great old hymn, What a Friend We Have in Jesus. I'm sure you've sung that song many times. Sure. Wonderful song. And as he's singing that song, an hour and a half after the truck hit me and killed me, I start singing it with him. He gets out of the car really fast.
Yeah.
And he runs over to the policeman and says in so many words, the dead man is singing.
Now, before we go a little bit further, this is happening in about an hour and a half. So you're talking 90 minutes that this guy basically is praying.
Pretty much, yeah.
And you think about yourself, and when you're praying about things, how often do we pray just a short period of time and then give up?
Sure.
I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, this seems to be the most insurmountable of odds here that we're going to see.
Utterly miraculous.
Right. And so how quickly I would have given up. I mean, I hate to say it, but if I'd have been the guy underneath the tarp, you probably would still be in heaven.
Me too. And, you know, that's not so bad. But
Amen.
I talked to a man the other day who had been praying for his best friend's son. They had 6 kids between them. The two guys had known each other since they were in elementary school. They were quite much older than that. They both had 3 children. And he had been praying for his best friend's son, the only one of them who had not trusted the Lord, 21 years old. And while I was talking to him about answered prayers in the audience, he got a phone call that boy had just accepted the Lord. Amen. And he told me afterwards, never give up. He said, we've been praying for that boy for 21 years. Never give up.
Somebody today needs to hear that.
Yes.
Don't give up.
Don't give up. Keep praying.
It's too easy to give up.
It is.
Okay, so you come back to life. You scare this preacher enough to get out of the car.
Yes.
So what? I mean, I'm sure everybody had to believe what he was saying to him. I mean, what can you imagine? You're going up to medical professionals because they're still standing around, and say, "Hey, he's alive."
Well, they thought he was was delusional, and not in a bad sense. They really thought, well, he just wants me to be alive, and he just imagined that he heard me, but he didn't. So he had to really plead with them, and they came over probably just to humor him. Oh, yeah, we'll check on him. and I was not very alive, but I was a little alive. So they did what they do so well. These are professionals. They leapt into action and ordered the equipment from town to be brought out to remove a living person because they didn't have that in place.
You were quite a ways out of
about 35 miles.
Right.
So I got there, and with a lot of difficulty, they actually dismantled the car so they could try to get me as close to one piece as possible, put me on that gurney, and then I wound up in 3 different hospitals before I was finally at a level 1 trauma center, which was in Houston.
How long was it, basically from the point that they realized you were alive to the point of getting you to a hospital?
6.5 hours.
6.5 hours.
Right, 6.5 hours.
Now, were you conscious through most of this?
Yes. Yeah.
What's going through your mind?
Conscious, but not necessarily coherent. For instance, I had a conversation with my wife in the second hospital before I wound up in the level 1 trauma center. They put the phone beside my ear, and she was saying, "You're going to be all right. They're going to take care of you," which I didn't remember. And I said to her, "I'm so sorry this happened. I just want to go home." And she, of course, thought that meant home, and I meant home, the one not made with human hands.
Right.
And of course, she didn't discover that until a year and a half later when I told her what I saw.
Right. So I'm assuming this has had to have been a long journey of recovery. I mean, because like I said, we jumped ahead there for a minute, but let's. So now you're in the hospital.
Right.
They're assessing everything that's wrong with you. I mean, you've got an arm that has to be put back together.
Right.
You've lost how many inches of bone in
4 inches in my femur.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got problem there. You've got
This leg is broken.
all right, and then this leg's broken.
There were other injuries they didn't find until 10 years later.
Oh my.
You know, because they if it bleeds, it leads. You know, whatever
Right.
is, and so they didn't find, like, I had a cracked pelvis. They didn't find out that till years later when, it started to show up on X-rays.
So you're in the hospital. How soon is it before you start realizing how serious the injuries are?
In the ambulance, because the shock had worn off, and I was in utter pain. Didn't know you could feel like that.
Right.
And I heard screaming in the ambulance, and I asked the young man, the paramedic that was taking care of me, if he could stop those people from screaming, and he put his hand on my shoulder and said, "There's no one else in the ambulance. You're the one that's screaming." So I was a 38-year-old man on the way to church, and now I'm screaming in the back of an ambulance. I really don't think I've ever been more frightened than I was at that moment.
And your wife going through that fear and having to make all kinds of decisions.
She's the hero of the story.
Yeah.
I survived. She overcame. She's got 3 children to take care of. She's got to keep her job because we didn't know whether we we needed the insurance. I'm hospitalized. She sleeps beside me on the cot in the hospital. She empties bedpans and balances the checkbook. She's the hero.
So you're wearing these. She makes this decision to have you put in these.
Right.
You called it the
I gave her about 5 minutes to make the decision. Yeah, Elizarov.
Okay,
Yeah,
Elizarov.
she has her own book coming out soon called A Walk Through the Dark.
Oh, that'll
How to help people who are caregivers.
That will be an amazing.
Yeah,
book.
she was put on the spot.
My wife had a similar situation,
Yeah.
going through because suddenly you're the one that's helpless.
Absolutely.
And you don't want to be helpless because we're
No.
men, but yet we find ourselves where we can't do anything.
Nothing.
And she's having to do everything. I used to make
nothing.
I used to make the joke, that I can play the piano with one hand, but I can't wash the dishes.
No. No.
So
No, you find out. No one knows better than you. You find out your limitations. You find out how frail we are in the first place. These earth suits that we occupy here are very easily harmed and damaged, and in some cases, irrevocably.
Right.
You can't fix everything.
Right.
It's a miracle that you and I are still here.
Right.
But we have the scars to show for it. No scars in heaven, but we do have them here. We sure do.
We do. And, I just want to say to somebody watching this program today, it's not a contest with God to see who goes through the most. And I know Don and I are sitting here sharing our war stories. And some of you may be sitting there going, I don't have anything to complain about. But the reality of it is the enemy knows our weaknesses. He goes after our weaknesses, and you've got to learn to trust God. I know that had to be the answer for you, and it was probably not an immediate thing.
You remember that old song, "Where Could I Go But to the Lord"? Mm-hmm. And you finally get to the point and you say, I can't do a thing for myself. I'm utterly helpless. And, I kind of actually began to shake my fist and say, why did this happen to me? I was on my way to church. I was on my way to help somebody. And God, whether you be angry at him and ignore him. And so I'm just kind of... And he speaks to me in that hospital room on the 21st floor in Houston through some music and says, it's not about you. It's about what I can do through you.
Isn't that so true?
Isn't it? You could turn your test into a testimony. Mm-hmm. You could take this pain and turn it into a purpose.
Right.
And so I've spent, and I know you have too, the remainder of my days trying to help people understand you can be knocked down, but you don't have to be knocked out. But you'll have to decide to get up again. You may not be the way you were before. But you don't have to be bitter, you can be better.
That's right.